Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this December 2nd, 2015 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony, and you're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can catch my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Now, I'm going to continue today asking you this question, whether Alex Jones actually is Bill Hicks. And like I said yesterday, are we wasting our time again? But, sometimes you take a walk out in the desert, like I said yesterday, and you just go, I think I'll waste a few hours, and you find a gold nugget. Now, was that a waste of time? Well, I'm not saying that if we actually, let's just say this. I'm going to start out by saying I've looked at this evidence for a long time, and seeing that I used to work on GCN, I used to have a show right after Alex. I was a guest on his show. I worked in Austin, Texas, and got to know a lot of the people around there. And since I was then discarded from being on those radio stations because my view of the Vatican, and at that time Alex's view was that everybody that talked the way I did was crazy and office rocker, and he was quoted many times as stating the Vatican really isn't powerful, etc., etc., and doesn't have half as much money, or even as a little bit of money that what I used to say was the most wealthiest organization in the world. So I have a little bit more of a personal interest in this, and I think when I look at the evidence, I am firmly convinced that there is a 99.9% chance these two guys are the same. Now, the reason I state this is because, a lot of times I do shows where I try to help you find out how are we really being deceived. And the reason I state that is that's how the New World Order operates. Now, let me give you an example here. Let's start out and talk about this, and I'm going to pose some questions. Now, do you think the New World Order is new, or do you believe it's an old world order that began, even under the time of Augustus Caesar, even before that, even at the beginning of time, with the story of Cain and Abel, which I've talked about in the past? Now, do you think it's a future thing, or a thing that should be feared, or something that started right now? And or do you think it should be identified, understood, and dealt with in a way most pleasing to God? Because after all, do you think that God created the New World Order? Do you think that God created this, this one world government that we're moving into? Do you think he created this, or do you think it's something that man created? I think, after all, it was created by God. And if you look back at the story of Cain and Abel, you'll understand it a bit better, maybe, from that point of view. Now, you can read all of this stuff in the Bible, yes. In fact, the Bible is a record that we have that publicly and truthfully sets forth the essentials of the New World Order's origins, the developments through time. Now, the question I have is, do you think that these people understand this? And do you think that they know what's going on in the Bible and are using it as a deceptive way to basically do evil in the name of good? And that's a major question. I want you to answer that. Now, the reason I'm going to delve into this question again regarding Bill Hicks and Alex Jones is because it really shows us the deceptive nature of the information that we're getting and where it comes from, and why they think it is important to put people in controlled opposition positions to lead you in the proper in their direction. Now, I think I'm pretty qualified to talk about this because I started out as a journalist working for the mainstream media in Naples, Florida, Naples Daily News, thinking that this was a way to get to the truth. Now, why did I feel that way? Well, I grew up in a time of suspicion regarding the government, the Watergate stories, Vietnam, all those things going on. And so, as a kid, I think you should know this about me. I grew up in Chicago, and my friends were my good friend, his uncle was a state representative, and his other uncle was high up in the Chicago police force. So we, as growing up as kids, always had political jobs. And when I finished college, I asked my uncle, my friend's uncle, to get, and they gave us jobs in the summer, always in the daily organization, etc., etc. So I was no stranger to how politics really works. Now, I knew nothing about the Vatican connection, even though I grew up as a Catholic. And so there came a time in my life, I had graduated from college, and I couldn't find a job as a journalist. I wanted to be a writer, get to the truth. I had this kind of fanciful idea that there was still freedom of speech in America. And so I went to Ralph, and I said, Ralph, I'm coming back to Chicago. He was the state representative on the Democratic side in Springfield, Illinois, in the state of Illinois. And I said, Ralph, can you get me a job until I find a job that I want to do? And he said, sure, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I don't know, what do you have? So I became the chauffeur of Harry Semrell, who was the Board of Tax Appeals Commissioner in Chicago at the time. Harry's long since passed away. And my job was to pick him up in the morning, make him eggs and whatever. His wife had recently passed away. Then I would drive him to work, take him to lunch, drive him home, and my day was over. And at the time, I decided to attend law school since I couldn't get a job as a journalist. And I did this. And there were times when Harry would say to me, Greg, why do you want to be a journalist? You're a young Polish guy. We got a lot of Polish people in Chicago. Everybody knows you, likes you. We can make you a city council member, maybe, or you can run for city council, and you probably win with your with knowing me and all the connections that you've had, having worked in the Springfield House of Representatives, etc. But there was something in me. I didn't understand the Vatican or the New World Order or anything, but something in me wanted to find the truth out, be a journalist. Now, I must admit, I made that decision. It isn't that purist decision where I knew everything and I could make the choice between good and evil. I think I made that decision, secondly, because I wanted to get out of Chicago, a personal reason. I want to see the world. And what better way to see the world than to be a journalist? Go to different states first. Then I ended up going to a different country, seeing Europe. And although financially and all the things I would have had, I would have joined the Mark of Cain. I would have joined the New World Order, so to speak, and become just like them, because unless I conformed, there was no way that I would remain in their political system. So I chose that, and thank God I did. I chose to take the other way, and it wasn't strictly for purist reasons. It was, this idea too. I wanted to get out of Chicago, see the world, and, so I'm not going to claim that I was making the right choice based on the right reasons back then. But as I moved on, I saw, even at the local level, my first newspaper job, even at the local level, you can get to some truth. You can, of course, at that time there were a lot of these consumer stories coming out, and maybe, you'd write a story and get a veterinary guy, a vet who was doing some shady things, or a mechanic who was cheating the customers. But I latched onto a story regarding a huge development in Florida, and there were some environmental problems with the water. And they were trying to get bypassed because of political power, and that would slow down their construction and maybe even block all the money that was invested in this development. And it was a huge scandal I saw. So I started writing about it, and I presented the story to my editor, and I was told it wouldn't run. And I said, well, what's wrong with it? And he said, well, it's just, you got to go verify some more things. So they sent me verifying more things, and I did that. Didn't run again. Finally, and when I did my verification the final time, I found out that the publisher of the newspaper had huge interests in this housing development. So I confronted him, and he refused to print the story. At that point, it was pretty tense for me at that paper. I was doing a lot of feature stories about people, and my stories were catching on even back then. And I figured, in fact, was contacted once by the local TV station to do some of my feature stories on the air. So I did. And I thought I could get this story done, but before I could do that, I was called into the publisher's office and fired. So then I started to figure out how this works. Well, I picked up with another newspaper in Michigan, a very good, better paying job and a better newspaper. But the corruption there was similar. And so I started to see it at a local level. Now, secondly, during this period of time at the Washington level, one of the probably the best investigative journalists was a guy by the name of Jack Anderson. And at that time, you don't even see that today. Those hard-hitting stories regarding the government were there, but he never, very seldom delved into the Vatican and things like that. Of course, you remember Bob Woodward and Bernstein and Watergate and all that went down. But and Bernstein did write some things about the Holy Alliance, and that was the tip of the iceberg. Those stories should have continued. And there should have been hard-hitting stories regarding the pedophilia, regarding Cardinal Spellman's role in the Vietnam War, the most powerful man in Chicago, in the country, a cardinal from New York. And this was verified by a number of police detectives. Years later, I was researching the story, but these stories never got the attention they deserved and kind of just faded away. And now you don't even hear about them. So basically, I learned there was no freedom of speech. So there came a point where I had to leave journalism for that reason. Because what's the sense, for me, what was the sense of doing that if I couldn't find out the truth, the original reason I got into that profession? So then comes the internet. And wow, how that opened things. And many people for the first time, especially here in America, felt my voice can be heard. In fact, people were starting to bypass journalists and just do their own research, which I thought was a great thing. So I figured, why not? I'll get involved with the alternative media. And then 9/11 came, and then I started researching 9/11, and that led 3 or 4 years later, I got my own radio show. I was a guest on the Alex Jones show. And when I did that, I was kind of naive in how the alternative media worked. And as I progressed in it, I used this Vatican story as a litmus test. And it seemed to be the one thing that flushed everything out. And for me, I made the choice to continue telling the story, which meant that I could no longer be on Republic Broadcasting Network, Genesis, and in fact, even to this day, there's stations out there that are offshoots of them that will not touch my stories or have me on as a full-time radio host, because I find out that some of them have connections or people that did work with John Stattmiller and Alex Jones, and now they start their own stations. So it is a pretty interesting dichotomy here of how this is put together. And what happened was, when the more people that felt they had their voice heard, the more people that felt they could tell the truth, the more that the New World Order had to deceive you, the more layers of this deception. Now, in the mainstream, the deception goes from city to state to federal to world. And in the alternative media, it has to be dealt with in a bit different manner because there's so many voices out there. And so the best way to do it, these layers of deception were created, was to first get the talented people into positions of authority on the internet, i.e., you see that Alex Jones appears right after Bill Hicks dies in 94, and Alex Jones is on the scene in 97, way before Bill Cooper, people like that, way before many others caught on in 9/11. So they have their man in place. Now, the layers here, though, go very deep. They're not just one. They have guys who are in the position of working for them, who actually criticize Alex Jones, i.e. Wing TV back in the day when I got started in this around 2004, 2005. Now, their job was to confuse you even more. Lump Alex Jones into the biggest disinfo agent with people like me, with other people, so they're mixing some people who are not with those who are and confusing you more, so the layers go deep. Then in every particular area, for example, if you're into 9/11, if you're into chemtrails, if you're into electromagnetic weaponry, if you're into the Vatican, they're going to have people that are doing that there. And some of them will appear to be criticizing just like the real truth tellers. And i.e. the thing to look for there, and I've dealt with all of them, and all those issues, is, look, you can't, when people deceive you, they're not going to tell you. So you have to do one of two things. You have to use your head, for one. And secondly, you have to look at the fruits of their work. Look at what they're actually saying. And compare that with things that seem to be on the right track or the truth, but still there you're kind of left up in the air. So I say look for the get all the facts about the people that you're dealing with, and then put them down and start sorting out the facts, things they don't want to talk about. And then you're going to have to make some conclusions based on what you have. And you're not going to be able to say categorically, but match the fruits of their work with the facts, and you will find that you have a pretty good idea of who they are. Now, I go one step farther. Now, for example, in the anti-Vatican issue, there's people out there who got started very early. And I look for that, a book written called Vatican Assassins. This is an example. And no one's better to evaluate this story than me, because I put the author of the Vatican Assassins on my radio show more than anyone else. Now, the point I'm trying to make, whether Alex Jones is a controlled opposition, which I can say 99.9% he is, he has a right to be there, because God ordained the New World Order. But you have a right to understand who he is, and to understand that he's deceiving. Same with me, or same with Vatican Assassins, same with anybody. You have the right to understand it, deal with it, then sort the information out, and make up your own mind. So I'm not saying these people shouldn't be there. They're going to be there. They're going to be there forever. And in fact, there's no way. People want to go to war with these guys, get them off the air. No, I want them on the air, because that's their job. I just want you to know who they are and why they're doing it. And then you can understand why there's people out there, many who've been on my show, that are trying to get to the truth and why they do it. That's all we can do. We get the whole story out. So, with that, without saying that they shouldn't be there, I'm not even saying, most people, what I used to like to say is we need to get rid of everybody, all the Jesuits in America, and the Vatican Assassins guy was the big guy on that. But that's not the right way. I understand that now. I'm not asking for the Jesuits to leave. I'm not asking for the Catholic Church to dismantle itself. It's going to be there. I'm just wanting you to know with the facts who they are and why they're deceiving you and where all the other deception goes, because in every one of these categories, especially the spiritual, the layers of this deception go so deep. They float into so many different religions, the Mormon faith, and all of these different places, Jehovah's Witnesses, Seventh-day Adventists. You can go down the line and see how this deception actually works. Now, the story about Alex Jones and Bill Hicks. I've looked at it and I said, I'm going to present one more show like this and see what you think. And maybe you have more, but the thoughts here are, you're not going to get Alex off the air. In fact, he's a media mogul. I've seen him when I worked on that station. He was just getting started, really. He'd been in it for, maybe 7 or 8 years, and just had a radio show, and he was in the market to control this voice of change, where people were automatically so happy. Finally, we have a place where we can talk about the truth. Well, little did you know, the truth was going to be controlled. And I believe that Jones and Hicks are the same. The reason they picked Hicks, and now people wonder, well, the first thing I asked, isn't it a crime to fake your death? Well, there's been so many people in the New World Order that fake their death. There's two different ways to look at this. One is this. There are laws that are not prosecuted for the people and higher up. For the CIA skirts the law every day. And I believe they picked Hicks because he was he was very bright. He made an impact on people. He talked against the government. He talked against many. He listened to his comedy, a very talented guy. And I believe they chose him, and he made the decision to move into this area and to take over and to become Alex Jones. Now, the time between the time Hicks supposedly died and Alex appears gives him enough time to, of course, go through the plastic surgery. Now, one of the things that you have to look at, I guess, is the facts about this. Just look at all the things that add up to going, well, why wouldn't these two guys be the same? I mean, there's just too many things there. And the reason I'm showing you this is so that you understand the levels of this deception, so that you can better figure out how to take all this information, this newfound freedom on the internet, and make it useful. Because they want you to waste your time taking all this stuff and going to the wrong place with it. And no better person in this whole thing to incite violence is Alex Jones. Now, if you listen to the rants that Hicks went through when he was doing his comedy act, then you listen to the rants and you look at the hand movements of Alex Jones, they're quite similar. And Hicks was very good at impersonating certain voices, and there's no reason. I mean, I can hear Jones's rants and Hicks just listening to his comedy. Now, I take an interest in that because I do stand-up comedy. So I have kind of a personal reason to figure this out. Because my question was I really, when I was a guest on Alex Jones, talking to Alex? Well, I was talking, what's in the name? Or was it really Bill Hicks? And if it was Bill Hicks, I wish I knew, because I liked his comedy. But I didn't. But there were some people that did know, and we'll get into that in the second half hour. And remember this. Nothing is wasted if it leads you to get more understanding in who these people are and how you can live with them. Because I will tell you, the worst thing to do is think you can overthrow them, get involved in these vicious protests that'll end you up in jail exactly where they want you to be. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Let's come back, have a little bit of fun figuring this out, and I'm going to leave you with this thought. I am convinced that Bill Hicks is Alex Jones, and we'll be back on the Investigative Journal right after this message.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Okay, we're back for the second half hour, and in this half hour I want to continue on that theme as Alex Jones, Bill Hicks, and I want to play a couple of small videos. One that I played yesterday, I have about 15 minutes to play on that. I have one of a 3-minute video from a guy who calls himself the world philosopher. I've listened to some of his other stuff, and he presents an interesting 3 minutes on this topic. But let's kind of recap some of the things, some of the facts here that may lead you to the same conclusion that I've made. Well, Alex's facial recognition matches 100% with Hicks. Alex's teeth match almost 100% with Hicks. Alex Jones and Hicks have 2 identical moles on the right side of their necks. Alex Jones is clearly a mole removed on the left side of his neck, exactly where Bill had one. Alex has characteristics of a nose job, facelift, dyes his hair, eyebrows. He has the same hairline as Hicks. Now, folks, these are all kind of things that are leading up to some things that I think are more important. Bill Hicks' mannerisms, viewpoints, attitudes are all present in Jones. The rants, especially from my point of view, when you go back and you listen to some of the Hicks's rants, some of Jones's rants. Now, Hicks's last work, he worked with, now, for example, Bill Hicks' best friend and producer was a guy by the name of Kevin Booth. And coincidentally, Kevin Booth is now Alex Jones' friend and producer. Now, you could make the assumption the reason is Jones and Hicks, if they're different people, they kind of talk this, they talk the same line, but that doesn't make sense to me because there were other people back then who talked even more about the truth, supposed truth, or the government criticism than Jones did. So why did Booth hook up with him? Could have hooked up with many others back then, and you can do your own research on that. Now, Hicks last worked with Booth, and Alex Jones first worked with him, were both about the Waco incident. Now, you can go and find that and look into that whole scenario, which is quite interesting. Now, Hicks' last interview was on Austin Public Access TV, and Alex Jones' first TV show was on the Austin Public Access station. Coincidence? Now, this one is really interesting, and you can spend some time. Now, Jones randomly, now this is amazing to me, accepted a Frame Picture Award, you can see the video on this, from Kevin Booth at the 10th anniversary event regarding the death of Hicks. And in that, when you listen to the oratory, when you listen to what Booth said, he said, and could it be that Bill Hicks is still with us in some way? Now, what was that referring to? I think it was referring to the fact that he's standing right next to him. Now, why would he select Alex Jones to have a picture, a big, huge frame picture of Bill Hicks, and say those things? There were many others at that time that were doing much more work than Alex did, or or Bill, because they were the same, perhaps. This was a hoax. This was a deception at the highest levels here. And it had to be selected by the CIA to pull this off. And the reason they selected Hicks is because, man, he could become a star. He could become their star. And Hicks was paid quite well for it. So the idea that every man has his price is quite true here. Now, that you go to look for that video where Jones randomly accepts this picture award of Hicks. And those cryptic words stated by Booth. Hicks died in 1994, supposedly. That's what the records say. And Jones has no verifiable history before then. Now, there have been these private sleuth guys who've gone around trying to figure out where Jones came from. Now, Bill Hicks had no public funeral. Remember that. Some people say he was buried in his backyard. Others say he's buried in the plot, his family plot, somewhere, wherever that is, in Texas, I think. I'm not sure. You can find that out. But the closest that people started to call Jones, and if we said Hicks or Jones here, just go with me for a while. Let's consider them the same. Now, Jones claimed he went to Anderson High School, but people that researched this, basically, there was no record of him then, and then that was the first people. Now, after that, somebody must have got to the people there, but they would say no comment. But then I found someone who checked the old high school yearbooks during that period of time, and there was no Alex Jones. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean. I'm going to use myself. If you want to trace my records at the law school I went to in Glendale, go right ahead. You'll find my transcripts right there. A bunch of people still know me from there. If you want to go back and trace my college transcripts at Western Illinois University, there's a bunch of people that, a couple people I get, not anymore, that, it's been a long time, but people know I went to Western Illinois, and you'll even have records I played for the football team there. If you want to go back to Notre Dame High School, now there you'll find still a lot of people in Chicago who will verify that I went to Notre Dame High School and I am who I say I am. And you can even ask a Major League Baseball player who was a friend of mine named Greg Lazinski, who played for the Phillies. And they used to call him the Bull. And we played football and baseball together, and he will verify that. So I can give you a history of where I was, and it can be proven. Now, in the case of Jones, he can't do that. And I wish he would, and I wish he could say the same thing I just said and then have everything proven. That, to me, would say, no, Alex, you're who you say you are, and you're not Bill Hicks. Now, why would he hide his past if he's telling you the truth, supposedly? That is one question you have to answer. Now, there have been times lately I've heard, people have emailed me, that he's saying repeatedly that he is Bill Hicks. So maybe he's playing that, oh yeah, I'm Bill Hicks, let's get on with it. You have to go to get more, I want to play this. And this guy here in a 3-minute video does a really pretty good job of I believe he talks about the Waco incident and some other things, but let's listen to the world philosopher here on Alex Jones.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've got to call this hoax for what it is. We've got to come out. And by the way, we're on to something now.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Mr. Hicks. Alex Jones, whoever you are. Bill Hicks is now Alex Jones. Alex Jones is who we all used to love and admire, Mr. Bill Hicks, after plastic surgery. This hoax cannot go on any further. And we're on to something, folks. We're on to something, folks. In this video, I'm going to show some videos that help illustrate the point, along with some photos. I'm going to show you a video of the first time he was on camera, face-to-face with George W. Bush before he was president, castigating him in front of a crowd. And it's to show you how it was all staged, it was all planned. He didn't do anything worthy of being arrested. He just made a statement about the Federal Reserve. And the bodyguards came and grabbed him, and he didn't fight it. He wasn't even shocked that it was happening. He was completely cooperating, and the cameraman was right on cue, following them out. You'll see.
The victory in 1998 is going to be good for Texas, and that's the most important thing about the campaign.
Shouldn't we abolish the Federal Reserve and the CFR? That's the real reality that none of you will talk about, most of you are members. That's what's destroying this country, Governor. Don't you stand for America, sir? What about the Federal Reserve and the CFR? You people are being lied to. This country's been taken over by Europe, and I'm being drug out. Laugh at it.
Can't you see how that's bullshit? The federal agents wouldn't have done that if it wasn't all staged. And look at Alex Jones. He's not reacting. That was all just reality TV choreography. The same manager, same producer of Sacred Cow Productions running the Alex Jones show as the producer of Bill Hicks, Kevin Booth. The agents wouldn't have allowed the cameraman to stand there and film. It would have been confiscated. He is an absolute fraud. Absolute. Whenever I've called the high school he claims to have gone to, they say no comment. And there's no trace of him actually going to the high school. There is no trace of Alex Jones prior to the death of Bill Hicks. Why? Because he is Bill Hicks.
The hoax has now been exposed. There was a hoax.
Okay, so that was just a short little clip showing you, from this perspective. That was a good one because it talked about that the time when Hicks, Hicks was already dead. It was the same guy. Then when they staged that event with Bush. Now, there's also an interesting thing. During the time when I used to be on Jones's show or Hicks's show, whatever, I could see his Hollywood connection coming out. And I had a little bit of one myself because I was in the business, although not at that level as he was. But I found it kind of interesting that through the years he always hung around with Charlie Sheen and other people. And my question is, do they know as well? I have an idea they might. But there's one real link here with Hollywood that's interesting. Director Rich Linklater. He's a director, was a big fan of Hicks. And he always used to say, I never worked with Hicks. I really wish I did. Then later, Linklater, guess what, launched Alex Jones's film career, giving him roles in Waking Life and A Scanner Darkly. Hicks was well respected in the comedy community, and today Alex is good friends with people like Joe Rogan, Charlie Sheen, etc. And remember that Hicks was a big fan of Andy Kaufman, if you remember Kaufman, the comedian who would go to great lengths to disguise himself and create separate personas, much like what Bill, I think, is doing today with Alex, creating Jones. Now, here's a real interesting twist to all this stuff. Now, you can get a lot of this information, recent information. Now, I remember getting this information back in 2005, 6, 7, etc. But now it's coming out in bigger places with more information. And one place you can get information is at the Atlantean Conspiracy, a thing run by Eric Dubay. Now, I ran into him when this whole flat earth theory was coming up. And there are many people out there who consider Eric Dubay a controlled opposition as well. So you see how deep this really goes. You got one guy working in this area who may be controlled opposition, criticizing Alex Jones in a sense to give Dubay more credibility. Well, the gig is up. It really doesn't matter, Eric or Alex or Bill. What really matters is that we understand the deception, and if you start digging deep, you will put these things together and realize that you're going to have to deal with it. Then you're going to have to find all the information out so you can make a logical choice that leads you to as close as you can get to the truth as possible. And so that's why I say this show is not a waste of time, even though I said it was a waste of time, because it may seem like that in the beginning. Well, let's get back to the first video I played yesterday, which offered a lot about Jones and brought up the fact of this guy there was an Alex Jones prior to the one that we see now. And if you look at the guy, there's only several videos. It could not be even Bill Hicks changed, which some people have said Hicks was losing weight, etc. I don't buy that. I believe something happened to this guy, whether they paid him off or they put him in another world or sent him to Tahiti for his life and lives a great life. Maybe that happened, because obviously this guy wasn't going to be as talented as the Alex Jones they needed to control the opposition. And now we're in 2015. He's grown into a media mogul, millionaire, has to be. 30 million people listening, TV stations, people working for him. Almost kind of like the ABC, CBS of the alternative media. This is what they wanted. Somebody talented like Hicks that could pull it off. And he was paid quite well, I believe. And that's why he has friends in Hollywood. And that's why Kevin Booth and all these people work with him. Let's listen to that video I played yesterday by Castle Jennifer Bassett.
Again, we have a much younger and leaner individual on the left and an older, thicker individual on the right. Looking at their necks, we see the individual on the left has well-defined neck muscles.
Okay, he's got pictures of the original Alex Jones, who's no longer there. And then he's showing the original pictures of Hicks as Alex Jones after the surgery. And there's no way they could be the same.
And a well-defined jawline. The individual on the right does not have well-defined neck muscles or jawline. Also, we have a much clearer image of the hairline, and the individual on the left actually appears to have a noticeably different hairline than the one on the right. The eyebrows and hair are also noticeably different in color, thickness, and texture. Again, we have two completely different individuals. The body builds are completely different, as well as a completely different facial structure. The individual on the right has much darker hair, especially considering that the image was taken outside. The individual on the left is very lean and muscular, and the one on the right, while he may have some muscle build, he is far from lean. It is important to note that at this time, in 1997, Jones would have only been 23 years old. While Bill Hicks spent a lot of time practicing and imitating the person of Alex Jones, certain genetic features were missed during the plastic surgery.
Okay, so I'm just going to break in here. When you see the pictures, and go to this video, you can get it at avclub.com, Castle Jennifer Bassett. You will see that the original Alex Jones had a different voice. His whole body structure was different. Everything was different. He disappeared somehow because I believe they wanted to replace him with a more talented Alex Jones, who was Bill Hicks.
What happened to the first Alex Jones? Was he taken out by the CIA and replaced by Agent Bill Hicks? Was he paid off to disappear and then be replaced by Agent Bill Hicks? Or was the first Alex Jones also a CIA agent, and for whatever reason, he was unable to fulfill his current assignment, so he needed to be replaced? While it is unclear who the first Alex Jones really was or what happened to him, what is clear is that there was a replacement. A replacement who had begun his career as a comedian and is now an actor in a reality show of false hope. He is a quite convincing actor. His true identity is William Melvin Hicks.
Did you see that? Did everyone see that?
It is important for the viewer of this video to know that Bill Hicks is 12 years older than what his character, Alex Jones, claims to be. That being said, Let's play a little game. How old is that man? Or 42?
Now we're looking at a picture of Alex Jones in 2004, and he does not look 30 years old.
32 or 44?
That's 2006, and he's looking pretty old.
35 or 47?
2009, he looks more like 47 than 35?
39 or 51?
Now, in 2013, this picture was taken, and that's no 39-year-old. From comedian to journalist.
Going from a comedian to a journalist was not a difficult transition for Bill Hicks. He had already begun his new journalism career when he went to Waco.
Today is day 7 outside the compound of the mount called Mount Carmel of the Branch Davidian breakaway group of the Latter-day Saints Seventh-day Adventist group, Yahweh Division. Back to you, Tom.
But more than that, Bill Hicks was given a specific role to play, a role that he had also incorporated into his comedy.
My friends, the information that you are about to witness from all of my years of research is the most important. It's been hidden in plain view the entire time. This is the ultimate secret, and it's about to be exposed.
Oh, you know what Bill's doing? He's going for that anti-marketing dollar. That's a good market. He's very smart.
They're already ready for us. If we don't play ball, they'll just turn the economy off. Well, here, we'll just turn you off politically, knowing you're behind it, because this only works, you kleptocratic con men scum, if no one knows that you didn't do it.
Oh, you know what Bill's doing now? He's going for the righteous indignation dollar. That's a big dollar. A lot of people are feeling that indignation. We've done research. Huge market. He's doing a good thing.
You've got to get mad. You got to get angry. You got to find your humanity, and you got to start kicking some New World Order ass in the info war.
Ooh, the anger dollar. Huge. Huge in times of recession. Giant market. Bill's very bright to do that.
There are a lot of people out there that are literally drinking Kool-Aid with lead, mercury, and arsenic in it under the direction of a charismatic leader with the last name of Jones, who also for quite some time claimed that you could make $1 million a year if you were to convince other people to drink the Kool-Aid as well. No, I'm not talking about Jim Jones from Jonestown in Guyana. I'm talking about Alex Jones from Infowars.com and his Beyond Tangy Tangerine.
What'd you do tonight, honey? Oh, we made arsenic childhood food now. Good night. Did you see that? Did everyone see that?
As you have just heard in Bill Hicks' stand-up routine, he is very familiar with how marketing is used to manipulate and deceive the general population. Those very tactics are the same tactics that he uses to deceive the awakening public. As seen earlier in the video, Bill Hicks uses real-world events and situations in his comedy routines. Bill Hicks was well aware of what his future role as a producer would entail, as he often spoke of it to his audience under the guise of comedy. He knew exactly what he was doing when he became Alex Jones. Once the public began to eat up the partial truths that Bill Hicks was feeding them under his disguise of Alex Jones, he desperately needed a cover story to conceal the large government paycheck that he was collecting. He needed a cover story that people would buy as to why he had so much money. Buy? Yes, buy. He first began by collecting a group of sponsors to plug and sell their products on his show.
Okay, this video goes on a bit. I might play it tomorrow, what the heck, and finish it up. I didn't have enough time. But it gets into how he started manipulating, not manipulating, but getting advertising through this dollar. But I don't believe that he made as much money as he said. I think it came from, like this gentleman said, a government paycheck. Now, we'll be back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.